Students, in this video we will continue second part of The Lost Spring. Here the writer met a boy whose name was Mukesh and he aspired to become a motor mechanic. So she asked him if he knew anything about cars. The boy was confident and replied that he would learn to drive a car. His dream was far away from reality, and although the boy was confident he would succumb to the societal pressures, he lived in Firozabad, which is famous for glass bangles. The writer felt that the boy's dreams would not materialize and gradually get influenced by the dusty streets of Firozabad. She wanted to say that as every family in the town of Firozabad was involved in the glass bangle industry, so would Mukesh do with the passage of time. She tells us that Firozabad was the main town of India for the glass blowing industry. The families had been involved in working at furnaces, welding glass, and making bangles for generations. They made so many bangles that it seemed that they made bangles for all the women of the world. Mukesh's family was also involved in the profession of glass bangle making. They were not aware of the law. They did not know that it was unlawful to force children to work in such glass furnaces. The workplaces were hot, dark, closed rooms without ventilation. The writer felt that if the law would come into force, it would rescue almost 20,000 children from these inhuman places where they were forced to work hard during the daytime. They often ended up losing their eyesight also. Mukesh was happy as he took the writer to his home. He felt proud as he informed her that it was being renovated. They walked down streets which were full of garbage and gave foul smell. The streets were lined with slums which were unsteady. The walls were falling apart. The doors were unsteady. There were no windows and were full of families where people lived along with animals. They reminded the writer of the prehistoric man who lived just like animals. Mukesh stopped in front of one such door, hit it hard with his foot and pushed it open. The house where Mukesh lived was partially constructed hut. In one corner was a firewood stove made with dead grass. A vessel with spinach leaves was kept on it. There were more plates with chopped vegetables in them. There was a thin young woman cooking the evening meal for the family. Her eyes were full of the smoke emanating from the stove, but she was still cheerful and smiled to see the writer. She was the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. Although she was not much older than Mukesh, she was a responsible person and was worthy to get respect from the family as the daughter-in-law of the family. She took care of 3 men, her husband, Mukesh, and their father. As Mukesh's father entered the house, the daughter-in-law hid behind the wall and covered her face behind her veil. It was a tradition for the daughter-in-laws to hide their face in the presence of the older male members of the family. The elder here was a poor bangle maker. He had worked hard all his life, first as a tailor, then as a bangle maker. He was still not able to either renovate the house or send his sons to school. He had just managed to teach him the skill of making bangles. Mukesh's grandmother justified her son by saying that he was destined to make bangles as it had been their family profession. She had seen her husband become blind due to the dust from polishing the glass bangles. She said that their family had got this art of bangle making from God, and so they had to carry on the tradition. They were born in a particular caste which had to follow the profession of bangle making. All their life they had just seen these glass bangles. They were everywhere, in the backyard, in the next house, in their yard, and even in the streets of the town. There were huge spiral bunches of bangles in different colors like gold, green, blue, pink, purple. There were bangles of all the colors of the rainbow. Further, the writer says that there were bangles in the neglected yards also. They were dumped on hand carts for sale. They were pushed by men along the streets of Firozabad. The writer describes the environment where these bangle makers work. They were small, dark huts. The children would sit next to a line of oil lamps whose flames were unsteady. They, along with their parents, joined the pieces of colored glass into circles called bangles. As they spent a lot of time in the dark, their eyes would not adapt to the bright sunlight. Many of them lost their eyesight before gaining adulthood. There was a young girl by the name of Savita. She wore a faded pink-colored dress. She was sitting with an elderly woman and they were joining pieces of glass to make bangles. Her hands moved like a machine, just like the tongs of a machine. The writer wondered if Savita knew that bangles were sacred. They were a good omen for a woman's wifehood. She thought that Savita would realize this when she would become a bride. That day, she would cover her head with a red-colored veil, color her hands with henna, and wear red-colored bangles on her wrist. The elderly woman sitting next to Savita also became a bride many years ago. She was still wearing the glass bangles but had lost her eyesight now. The elderly woman complained that she had not eaten even a sar of food. Sar is a unit of measuring quantity. In Hindi we call it ser. The woman wants to say that they are so poor that they cannot eat enough food. That is the benefit that she has received by adopting the profession of bangle making. The woman's husband has a flowing beard. He says that he does not know anything other than bangle making. All that he has been able to accomplish is to make a house for his family to live in. The writer wonders that probably the old man has achieved something which many other people have not been able to achieve. At least he has been able to secure a shelter for his family. This problem was prevalent in all the homes which carried on the profession. They did not know anything else other than bangle making, and it did not even provide them enough to eat. The young men who had entered the traditional profession also had the same complaint. With the passing time, there was no improvement in their condition. As they had been working hard for countless number of years, they did not have any ability to do something else or to dream of it. The writer suggests them to form a cooperative. She talked to a group of young men to get out of the clutches of the cruel middlemen who had trapped their elders. The men said that if they dared to do something like that, they would be dragged and beaten up by the police and sent to jail. Their acts would be termed to be unlawful. The writer felt that as they had no leader, they could not think of doing things differently. They all were so tired, the men and their fathers. The men complained that it was a continuous process. Their poor condition led to lack of concern for their problems. This made them greedy and led to injustice. The writer envisioned that there were two separate worlds. One was of such families who were stuck in poverty and the pressure of doing the traditional profession according to the caste in which they were born. The other world is a never ending cycle of moneylenders, middlemen, policemen, law keepers, government officials, and politicians. Both of these worlds had forced the young boys to follow the family traditions. The young boys get into the profession and become a part of the vicious cycle even before they realize it. If they did anything else, it meant that they were challenging these two worlds. The boys had not been reared up to be bold so that they could dare to go against the system. The writer was happy to sense that Mukesh had the spark in him. He repeated that he would be a motor mechanic instead of a bangle maker. He wanted to go to a garage and learn the job. The writer asked that as the garage was at a distance from his home, Mukesh insisted that he would walk up to it. She asked him if he dreamt of flying planes. The boy became silent and refused. He did not know about them as he did not know about planes. Not many planes flew over Firozabad as he had only seen cars moving around in Firozabad. His dreams were restricted up to them. So this is all about second part of Lost Spring, that is Mukesh's story.